Hello, I'm Luca Tagliaferro, and this is SEO in 2024 Additional Insights.
Luca, what's your additional insight for SEO in 2024?
So today we're going to talk about zero lead content.
Zero lead content. Okay, you told me zero lead marketing also beforehand. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, because when I talk about marketing in SEO, it's mainly about content. So it's zero lead marketing, which means that you produce content and you do marketing on your website without immediately thinking about generating new leads, but thinking about more of a long-term strategy to develop your brand online.
So it sounds good to some people, but I guess how do you justify that to marketing directors, CMOs who are just looking to measure the impact of your activity and ask you how many leads you got today?
Well, that's a very good question. I think we all know that the value of a brand in SEO is very, very strong. We've seen lately lots of research and lots of studies that confirm the big brands are dominating the top 10 results. So in SEO, unfortunately, if you don't have a recognizable brand that people know, you don't really get success. I mean, you do, but you're missing out a little bit. So one of the biggest ranking factors is having a recognizable brand. There are countless of examples about this. One of the most obvious one is I remember MailChimp that was trying to rank for email marketing, right? So, but they managed to build a brand that is larger than the volume of email marketing and all the variations combined. So now when people think about email marketing, they think automatically about MailChimp.
Do you try and measure the value of having a brand? Because you look at something like Amazon as another example, and Amazon get much higher click-through rate for generic search results because people recognize the brand Amazon. Do you try and actually put a measured value of brand because of that?
Yeah. Also because one of the goals that I have as an SEO consultant for my clients is to increase the search volume for the brand name, because you can't get it wrong. I mean, you will always be ranking on top. There is no other way. Think about it. You know, if you search for Amazon, you are on top. If you search for Apple, you are on top. So if people already know your brand, they search for it, your competitors are not going to be able to outrank you.
Yeah, that's a great thing to be doing, certainly, because obviously click-through rate from a brand is going to be optimal because people are seeking precisely that search term. How do you know it was the SEO efforts that led to the increased search volume for the brand, though?
That's when zero lead marketing comes to help, because when you produce content that is engaging and it helps people without necessarily thinking about leads, then you are creating the brand. So one of my clients is the largest personal training provider in the UK. We have our top content on the blog generating about 100,000 clicks a month just from one article. It doesn't produce any lead because it's about gym quotes. So, but it's been ranking consistently on position 1 for 2 years, and I'm sure that even though it's very difficult to measure, but nobody wants to delete that article. Even the directors, they keep asking me how many leads they got, but eventually they gave up asking that question because there are no leads coming on Google Analytics, but they still don't want to delete the article because they know exactly that after that there is something good happening about it. So people know the brand. People know the brand. We are thinking about printing shirts with the gym quotes and the brand that people can use in their gyms. So kind of like Gymshark did at the beginning, where it gave. Of course, they sell clothes. They don't sell courses, but this is the idea. So you start to develop this type of content, and then you enlarge it for all the channels, and you become suddenly associated with the product that you're selling.
So for people that land on that article, that's a high volume of traffic there. Do you try and measure the path they take on the website after consuming the article, or did they just consume the article and then leave, and then you can't really measure after that?
Well, we tried. Now in Google Analytics 4, it's more difficult to do that because in the previous Universal Analytics, we had the reverse funnel, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we had the reverse funnel. So we were starting from the lead and then working our way through back to the content that we were producing, checking all the paths that the user were taking. Now you can still do it, but we decided not to go too much into the details of this is more like a strategic decision that they take. Because when you start to measure things that are really difficult to measure, it can get a little bit messy. So we are trying to leave things as they are, trusting that it's doing well, and repurposing the content as well on social media and on the other channels that we use. And then we try to measure it that way because it's a little bit more simple. That's zero lead marketing. There are other companies doing it as well. I do it for other clients as well. I mean, it's not for everyone. I understand this because you have to be an established brand already. You have to have a good level of traffic already to be able to afford this kind of risk, if you want to call it a risk. But for a new brand, probably this is not the right tactic. Because, if you need to make sales or generate leads straight away, at this point, probably not even SEO is a good tactic because it takes time, right? Everybody knows 3 to 6 months and things like that. In which case, you're probably better off doing PPC.
But you also talk about standalone insights and information that you can generate as a result of doing zero lead marketing. So what insights and information do you track?
Right. So we track all the things, like, for example, the amount of backlinks that these articles are generating, which is something that we would have to do anyway as part of the SEO strategy, but we would have to pay, someone to do it. So a link builder, an agency, and this can become very expensive. So we tend to measure how successful the article is, not just in terms of how many visits it got, but also how many backlinks it is generating. Because these are things that are easily shared on other websites. Another thing that we do is producing original studies and research, statistic articles, and things that help the brand to be seen as an authority in the sector where they operate. This kind of content doesn't produce any leads or any sale, but it does help with the sharing of the content. When you hear people saying, "Oh yeah, this content needs to be good for sharing," and that's how you do it. You produce studies like SparkToro does all the time. There are a number of brands that do this as well. They don't generate any lead from that, but they are shared everywhere on the internet in the industry. And that's successful too. So you can't argue and say, no, this content is completely useless, because it's not. There are other factors if you look at it, and that's what marketing is. And it's also healthy to position marketing in a different way than sales. Because in my experience, for example, what companies tend to do is that they take sales as the main goal, and they base everything on that. So every activity that goes within the company is to support sales. Okay, so if marketing doesn't generate leads, it's not good. If it doesn't generate sales, it's not good. If this article doesn't have a 10% conversion rate, not good. But this kind of mentality, I think, is hurting the growth of a company, because you can't have everything producing sales or leads. You need to have something that also helps with generating word of mouth as well.
Absolutely. It's like looking at bottom of funnel keywords for paid search and only focusing on that because it converts well. Eventually, you're not going to grow the overall pie of the market that's attracted to you. And I was also intrigued by the fact that you talked about things like T-shirts with the gym owners that you were talking about as well. And that's obviously not a traditional SEO activity. So are there other marketing channels, marketing departments that you like to work with and learn from in order to assist with your growing of the brand?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. And I'm happy you're asking it because this is part of my research when I start a new project in SEO. I work with the support team because they handle most of the complaints and the support questions that people ask about the brand. And this is the best way to learn about what customers want. So it's like when you enter the customer mind and you understand exactly what they expect, what they want, you start to see trends and you start to see the bigger picture. So this can drive also keyword research and this can drive also social media as well. This is another controversial topic probably. The zero volume keywords, which is another thing that is talked a lot about. But I don't believe this is controversial. I believe this is like one of the basics of doing SEO right. Because even if a keyword is showing like 10 searches per month, but it's asked a lot within the company, then you should write about it, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And even if it's showing zero keywords, it might have more in the future, or perhaps Google isn't disclosing the full data that it has.
Yeah, especially when something is new. If you take ChatGPT back in 2022, it was showing like 90 keyword volumes, but now it's like 50 millions. So you can't predict the future. So you always have to bet on it.
Yeah, and you need to be ahead of the ball. You need to be where the ball is going.
Yeah, exactly.
So, how do you decide on the content then that you need to write? Because I mean, you've given an example of an article that gets a lot of traffic. How do you define that opportunity that you need to write about?
Right. So, well, a little bit it's experience. I know what type of content can get most of the backlinks. I know what type of content is more likely to rank. It's something that you develop with experience, and so I'm able to identify an article that can have a little bit of a success. So, but if you don't have experience with this, you need to look at the website and see how successful it is in SEO already. Because chances are that when your website authority is great and your page is indexed straight away and it's ranking on page 1 after 1 day, then chances are that most of your articles will be successful as well.
So do you not look at keyword volume?
Well, keyword volume, yeah, obviously, but I'm always very careful because also when the keyword is really high in volume, everybody is targeting it. So the competition is really, really tough. So there is no point, especially with the new website I had last year. There was a dentist, and this dentist wanted to grow his website with SEO, but we couldn't really rank for any high volume keywords, especially not in the US where the market is even more competitive. So we had to be patient and rank for the smaller one until we got to a point where everything was ranking, and then we started to be a little bit more ambitious and target the bigger ones. But it depends on the website. Like everything, it depends on SEO, but it really depends on the website. Because another client of mine is already established, and we have no problem in targeting big volume keywords.
Well, you've shared what SEO should be doing in 2024. Now let's talk about what SEO shouldn't be doing. So what's something that's seductive in terms of time, but ultimately counterproductive? What's something that SEO shouldn't be doing in 2024?
Great. So this one thing they shouldn't be doing is using AI and blindly following AI for content. Okay, I know it saves you time. It's very tempting. You can produce 1,000 articles in like a week, but don't do that. We have plenty of examples of companies that did it in the past. I shared a lot of examples on LinkedIn as well. They got high engagement. People were surprised about the power of AI, how much content you can do, but it's factually incorrect. Not only that, but it's also not very well structured, and it doesn't read very well. Now, after almost 2 years, as AI is out, people started to realize that, they shouldn't be doing that. So if you want to use it, you want to save time for your clients and, increase your margins, obviously you do it, but use a methodology that makes sure that you don't get it wrong. So you need to humanize AI content, let's say. One of the things that I always do is cutting out the fluff, because AI is terrible for that. No matter how much details you give in the prompt, there is always a lot of fluff. It's factually incorrect. Even if you get links to, ask the AI to provide you a link to a source, the link can be wrong, to go to a broken page. So you need to review the article. You need to make it look like it's probably written and checked. So you need to become like an editor almost in your job as an SEO, from a writer to an editor, and be able to check everything before it gets published. There are lots of other checks you can do, of course, and but still, AI can be very useful, especially if you don't know the topic very well. It cuts the part where you have to do the research. But if you produce original content, obviously AI is not going to help you with anything. And one thing that AI doesn't do is it doesn't give you anything more than what is already out there. So information gain in SEO is very important. There are patents and Google patents that you can learn from. And if you go to the good old Biz/Key website, you can learn more about it. But AI doesn't do that. So with information gain, it's something that you still have to do manually.
Luca Tagliaferro is Senior SEO Consultant at Luca Tagliaferro Consultancy. You can find him over at lucatagliaferro.com. Luca, thanks so much for adding your additional insight to SEO in 2024.
Great. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been great.
I've been your host, David Bain. You've been listening to an episode of SEO in 2024 Additional Insights, a Majestic series that complements the original SEO in 2024 podcast, video series and book. Find out more at SEOin2024.com.